America, we stand for freedom. Though freedom is never really free, we yearn and strive for government, protecting our liberty.
Good evening and welcome to Your Right to Know by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Mary Lotze and I will be your host for this evening's show. Joining me tonight is a friend from Worcester, Miss Bonnie Johnson. Good evening, Bonnie, and thank you for joining us. Bonnie is the media coordinator for the End Common Core program, and that's what our subject is going to be about tonight. What is Common Core? What is the End Common Core petition? What is PARCC testing? We really want to explore this because I have found it a very emotionally and passionately charged topic. And I'll tell many of our viewers, because I am of the age where I no longer have children in the school system. So it doesn't relate to me specifically, as I know many of our viewers may be in the same position. So tonight is part of what we talk about: defining Common Core, ending Common Core, why you want to end Common Core. Why is it important to people like me who no longer have children in the school system? And I just want to give you a little story to our viewers. Because I had heard so much about Common Core, read a lot of it on the papers, social media, many parents were anguished over trying to help their children get through Common Core homework, and so many people were upset about it and just anxious. That I felt that I had to go learn more about it, just because of I'm in this role and I wanted to learn. So Governor Charlie Baker throughout this year has had many forums. In April of this year, he had a forum at Fitchburg State University that I went to. And I thought it would be maybe me and 3 others that went to this forum. I was blown away by the passion and the discussion and the level of discussion and commitment on both sides, pro and con, about Common Core. And I said, this is a story we need to share.
Yes.
And that's when we started going after identifying someone who would come to us and talk about it. So I'm so thrilled you're here, Bonnie, and thank you, because we really have a lot of questions to ask and to get into it. So just to start out, right now in Massachusetts, we have what's known as the Massachusetts Standards.
Correct.
And many people know that Massachusetts Standards is actually the curriculum, and then we have MCAS testing. Could you talk a little about that and give us some background?
Well, first of all, the Massachusetts Standards are no longer being taught in Massachusetts. Okay, so the Massachusetts
now that's kind of
Standards,
unique, isn't it?
The Massachusetts Standards were created as a result of Ed Reform 1993 on, and during that time we were not #1 in education, but we worked really hard in our state with our teachers to develop standards that would make us, and in fact did raise us up to #1 in education in our nation.
So out of the 50 states, Massachusetts ranks first.
#1. We still rank #1, but our scores are slipping. So we had our Massachusetts Standards in 2010, and there was a governor's conference, and Deval Patrick went to this conference.
Was our governor at that time.
He was the governor. And during this governor's conference, they decided that they would like to, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, adopt this thing called Common Core educational standards. So we had our Massachusetts Standards, which we went through a lot of bumps and bruises. It wasn't always perfect.
I remember when that rollout, yeah.
MCAS, the testing component of the Massachusetts Standards, hasn't always been perfect, but we've been continuing to work towards it. And 2010 came around, and Deval Patrick, as well as the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, made a vote. And their vote was to do away with the Massachusetts Standards. Up to that point in 2010, we had spent $100 billion with a B, local and state money, to develop those standards, and we were #1 in education. I cannot understand why anybody thought this was a good decision. The Common Core at that point was unknown, untested, unproven. It still remains a lot of those things.
So we just take a proven and constantly evolving and improving even more set of standards, Massachusetts standards for education curriculum, and the MCAS test. Cost us $1 billion.
No, 100
$100 billion. $100 billion
That's
to get there.
That's a huge number.
And then all of a sudden, taxpayers' money. I'd like our
Taxpayers'
viewers
money.
always remind our taxpayers where this money is going. And
12
it was
unelected people.
voted, so that never went to the voters to decide
nowhere.
on. And so it was just one day because Governor Deval Patrick went to a committee hearing of some type with other governors. They adopted this new program called Common Core curriculum.
Yes, Common Core. It's just Common Core.
Common Core, and the standards would be, or the testing of Common Core is now known as PARCC, P-A-R-C-C.
Yes, P-A-R-C-C, the PARCC testing. So, so when we implemented Common Core, we kept the MCAS. In the little bit that it has been tweaked towards the Common Core standards, but it hasn't been tweaked much. So we really abandoned it about 5 years ago, the MCAS that we knew up until 2010. And in comes Common Core. Now, Common Core is being implemented. It is like, first of all, Common Core is owned by a private organization. The testing component is owned by a private organization. It is like us going in and buying Quicken off the shelf. We cannot adjust it. We can't tweak it. We have a little bit of tweak room.
So the state doesn't have, the state, our own education department, or even based on parents who want to change the standards because they don't, or the curriculum because they don't like it, they don't like the way their children are teaching. I mean, I keep hearing about this math.
Well, the teachers that want to change it, the teachers, over 50% of teachers nationwide are opposed to Common Core standards for so many reasons. Our good teachers are leaving. I was just with a friend last night, and she said she stopped teaching ESL because of Common Core.
And ESL is
English as a second language. She stopped, she quit. She said, I will not. They were making her go to trainings that were ridiculous, that they were getting paid to go to, but they were stupid. And all of the teachers were saying the same thing. So it's affecting not just kindergarten through grade 12, it's even affecting outside organizations like ESL.
Let me ask you this, who takes the Common Core test? Is it just certain grades? Is it certain grades at certain times of the year? When is the PARCC, Common Core test? The curriculum obviously is taught all year, but when is the Common Core PARCC test, which assesses?
What has happened is that when they implemented Common Core is still being implemented throughout the state. So what is happening in Lexington may not be happening in Worcester. So they're still trying to catch up because you have to buy the books. You have to, you have to do it the Common Core way.
Because it is a curriculum.
Because
so the curriculum is generated based on
the Common Core is standards,
sorry.
But there are curriculums that go with the standards. So now all the schools have to throw out all the books that they owned and buy all these new books, regardless of the fact that we think they are substandard. We have people who were on the Common Core Validation Committee. That was Sandra Stofsky, who lives in Massachusetts and has been really outspoken. She helped develop the Massachusetts standards. And she was on the Common Core standards, and she and one or two others refused to say they were good standards. She felt they were substandard to our standards. So then you have the testing components, which have been an issue of late. And so they are still testing MCAS. MCAS test was done not very often, so it was a manageable time. PARCC wants testing 3 times a year for different years, so the PARCC testing component is excessive. It's abusive. It is data. They are going after data on our kids. They are trying to, if you remember the old days when we were growing up, when they did the tracking, It's very similar to some of that. And they're asking the kids questions that they should not be asking. And the kids have no options but to answer them. So
Now,
that's in
just-
the PARCC test.
Just to ask for our viewers' edification, when you say they're asking children questions for tracking purposes, is this questions on what have you learned in history, what have you learned in English, or is it sort of social
What
questions
bus stop
like,
do you get picked up at?
so which means there is maybe determining someone's neighborhood and their financial income. So they're actually gathering personal, even though it may be aggregate, but they're gathering personal data
They
on
are.
the children versus how much of a certain subject matter they may have
They're
learned
probably
and
trying to
achieved.
do that also. There's a lot of, so at this point, the PARCC test, which are the same person who signed in Common Core was on the board to get PARCC involved. The PARCC test went from 25 states or 26 states being involved down to 7 now. So that's how many people have abandoned
Already
it and
dropped
said
it.
and said it's a bad test.
So again, to just explain to our viewers, when Governor Patrick and all these other governors, presumably 50, but it may not have been all 50, governors that went and learned about the possibility of going into this Common Core and PARCC testing, that how many states did you say signed on?
I know 4 did not. 4 were very smart, and at this point, well over 10 or 15 are trying to get out of it.
have gotten out of it since. And I think actually...
No, they're trying to get out of it. It's not easy.
Okay.
It is not easy. We are the first state to do a ballot question to try to get out of it. And
that's what this petition is all
that's
about.
what
is-
this petition is all about, is saying we want a voice, we want a choice.
I do want to ask you about the ballot question, but there's so much else that I
know.
kind of want to go into first. One of the things that I hear about is part of this Common Core and PARCC testing specifically is that children of all ages are expected to have a certain amount of facility using a computer, a laptop computer, or a tablet. Now that may be fine for children whose parents have the finances to maybe buy their children little electronic games when they're young, start them out preschool learning to visualize, screen to hand to whatever learning. But this is a learned skill. I think any of our people out there who didn't grow up in the business world that they had to start working on laptops or computer screens still like to take things and write out a letter, write out an essay, write out something, and then key it in, because you're not, that's a
It is a learned skill.
skill to type in.
And I will tell you that I have been to some of the same hearings that you went to, and I listened to the teachers say, we don't even know how to do this test. And we're expected to help our kids, and it's time consuming. It's taking away from our teaching in the classroom, and some of our kids just don't get it and aren't going to get through this. I just read an article, the senator down in Louisiana has filed a bill because this computer test assumes everybody that no one's colorblind. Well, I have a son who's colorblind. He could never have done that test. The stress that would have gone on my son, the stress that went on my son to pass the eye test at the Department of Motor Vehicle was bad enough.
Sure.
Never mind if he had to go through first, second, third grade, being colorblind and having to do these things. And also, it's really bad. They had a huge hearing about the dyslexic. The dyslexic population with these computer tests, it's awful. So we already are taking, 2 significant groups of kids and putting undue
a heavy
stress.
burden on them.
It's undue stress. They don't need that kind of stress.
Now, when I went to the hearing in April, there was one city councilor there from a nearby city. I just won't name her, but it is a she. And she asked the question of the panel, and she said, I want to know about the finances of this, because we as a city are looking at this as possibly just another unfunded mandate. We have to now buy an untold number of tablets, laptops, or other computer device for the children to take the test. And she said, where is this money supposed to come from? Now, just to preface this before I ask you to answer, the Sentinel, our local newspaper the other night, Sentinel and Enterprise, actually had an article on it, and the city of Lowell has already had to spend somewhere in the vicinity of $1 to $2 million just for the computer apparatus for the children to take the PARCC test.
It's an unknown and an unfunded mandate. On top of that, from what I'm hearing from different school systems, so we're being told all the kids need these computers. And up to this point, they aren't labeling it as part of PARCC or Common Core. The superintendents have been very sneaky about how it's just needed in their budget and not saying,
Okay.
you know, this is for an unfunded mandate.
So there's no way to really tabulate what dollar value is going to
There is no way to totally
this.
tabulate this. However, it's going to continue. And you know, if all our kids were benefiting from these tablets and these things, maybe it would be a good thing. But from what I'm hearing, once the schools even get the tablets, they keep them. And they don't let the kids use them for other things, because if they get messed up, they're in trouble. So they're not using those same things in computer labs. No, some are, some aren't. It just depends on the district.
Well, and that might also depend, because one of the things I heard that day when I went to the hearing is the IT departments in schools typically are not set up with all of these IT people. Again, people who know how to fix computers or keep them up to date, make sure they're all uniform, to be able to support these large numbers of computers coming into the schools. And yet there is a provision for children who aren't good on computers or afraid of computers, or for cities and towns that can't afford computers, laptops and tablets, to do a stubby pencil PARCC test.
There is. I mean, but even the schools that also have the computer, they're hitting, so it's a timed test, which puts you under pressure. And then you answer a question and your next one takes 30 seconds to come up because it's slow. You know, and all of these things are just adding to the stress. The stress. Yep, I had a highway guy in the town I live in Boylston, who I said, have you guys heard of Common Core and PARCC? My son took the PARCC. He hated it. He came home so mad and angry at that test, and yet he had taken the MCAS a month before that and had no problem with it. So there's definite stress going along with this PARCC test.
One of the things that I've heard about the PARCC test, in addition to sort of objective answers and questions and answers, is that there's essay components to it. Now, the Common Core supporters will say, well, that's a good thing because that supports critical thinking. That really supports an upper level or a deeper level of understanding and knowledge, and the being able to give that back and relate that to people. However, I think there's a problem with the questions. Let me just tell you one of the questions that was put out when I went to the hearing. This was a question that one of the parents said was given to the child, and that was, could you, in an essay, describe which one of the amendments to the Constitution you would eliminate and why? Maybe in a college level, that would be a good question to ask. But my question on this level is, who is looking at the essay? What is the bias of the person looking at the essay? And if the child, in fact, maybe doesn't say, I'd get rid of the Second Amendment that gives people the right to bear arms.
And who is teaching them that any of these amendments are bad for us?
Or exactly.
I mean,
or
that's a subjective question.
It's a subjective question, and who would assess the answer? If that is a true question, I'm only going on what I heard.
Yep,
but if that was a true question on the essay, and the child didn't answer correctly on maybe the Second or the 14th Amendment or something other that is in the news and controversial, what would that child get?
I mean, they have definite answers that they're looking for. So I don't know the answer to that. I think it goes along with the stress related to it. I think that is an absolutely inappropriate question as a teacher. I think that's unfair to any student. I don't care what grade or even college level that they are. If you want to ask what, if you want to ask about amendments and what they mean, that's different. but asking them what they would want to get rid of, I just think that's an overstep of the bounds of what Common Core and PARCC are doing right now.
Well, this goes into then a different question, because one of my friends came up to me and said that they heard that there are special interest groups that are actually writing the standards, and therefore children are being tested on these standards. And I'll just put it out there for everyone. The person who came to me is a pro-life person, and he told me he heard, and these could be rumors if you have any understanding of this, that some of these standards are being written by Planned Parenthood. In other words, there are interest groups that support various answers and responses. Do you have any knowledge of who's writing some of these Common Core, the standards, and therefore the PARCC testing?
We know the teachers aren't writing them, and the teachers are not involved. So it does not surprise me that it's interest groups.
Okay.
And I've heard that, and I've seen some proof. I haven't seen any proof on the Planned Parenthood. Okay. But again, that doesn't belong in our schools, in my opinion.
Right.
That is a personal choice. And I don't think anybody has the right to teach my kid what is right or wrong in the public schools about this.
You get to somebody my age, and I'm going to say, whatever happened to reading, writing, and arithmetic?
In arithmetic, I would agree.
I mean, but I understand.
I think to go back to what the Common Core is, it's a set of standards. They're telling us what to teach and how to, in a way to teach it. And if you don't teach it that way, the testing component won't work. So, there's just, these standards are they weren't supported by the teachers. The teachers' unions are against them. We need to get rid of it. And the PARCC test is about to go away. Okay, now Commissioner Chester has said, don't think we want...
Who is Commissioner Chester, just to clarify for...
He is the head of the Department of Ed. He is the person
in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts. He's the person who signed Common Core in 2010.
So he is...
And he's also the person who was on the board of the PARCC Commission. So he definitely has a conflict of interest. But the other day he came out and said, I don't think we want PARCC anymore, but we really don't want MCAS, because he abandoned it. And I think we're going to do an MCAS 2.0. What we want to make sure of is that MCAS 2.0 supports the Massachusetts standards, not the Common Core standards.
And that, in fact, continues to elevate the level of learning of our Massachusetts students.
So Common Core, in essence, is taking the Massachusetts standards, which as Massachusetts #1 in education are up here, and taking all the lower states, Mississippi, Louisiana, and there are other ones, and saying, we know these states need to raise up. Well, we all agree we want their standards to raise up, but we shouldn't have to lower our standards to do that. And that's what's going to happen to make us common. In order to make us common, we have to lower our standards and raise other people's. My question is, after our state having spent $1 billion on the Massachusetts standards and the MCAS, why wouldn't all of those states aspire to raise themselves up to our level? And they could copy our standards.
Correct.
They could borrow them, they could tweak them for their states. We didn't start off as #1. In 1993, we had a lot of work to do.
We worked and got there.
And we worked and we got there, and we don't want to go backwards. Common Core sends us backwards. It's lowering our standards. No, we want to stay up here, and if the other states want to come up and join us, hallelujah. That's what we want. We want all our kids to be well educated.
It almost seems like the common denominator, the commonality of Common Core is that we'll all be alike.
And part of the reason they're trying to say this works is that there is less than 2% of people who travel interstate, and that would keep all of them on the same path. Well, I'm sorry, if I'm coming from Massachusetts and I'm going to a state with a lower standard, I want it, or coming to Massachusetts from that state, I want my kids to be pushed, to be educated better.
And that's actually a very interesting thing, because I was at the Johnny Appleseed Festival in Leominster, and I was collecting signatures for Common Core. And one of the things I found was very helpful was to find parents with children in tow because they knew more about what was going on in the educational system. And I mentioned it to the woman, would you like to sign the petition? She didn't know about it because she was the children's aunt. So she looked at her children and she said, could you tell me about Common Core and PARCC? The kids said, oh, it's so easy, we love it. And I said, is that what you want? Your children not to be tested, your nieces and nephew not to be challenged, I'm sorry, in their education, but just take things that are constantly easy. Bonnie, this discussion has been so beneficial to our viewers out there, and I know we have a petition, and I want you to speak to the camera and talk about the petition, because there's a little bit of maybe funny business going on. I'd like you to explain different things about what to look for on the petition and signing the petition.
So the petition is to end Common Core in Massachusetts. So the website is www.endcommoncorema.com. Please go there. You will see where we're collecting signatures. You'll see how you can help. You'll even see how you can donate, because this is not cheap, even though all of us are volunteers, or most of us are volunteers. So on this petition, we have 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. We need 100,000 signatures by November 15th. And we need your help to do it.
And that's November 15th, 2015. In
right.
order to get it on the November 2016 presidential ballot.
So there are 12 petitions right now circulating. I want you to remember the letter C, C for Common Core. It is very important. We have people saying, come sign the Common Core petition. You think you're signing it. You're actually signing other things like taxes on millionaires or other petitions. And so we want to encourage you to make sure you're looking for petition C. And we're going to be at Foxborough Stadium signing this. We need help all over the state. Again, our goal in 2010, we were told we were going to have Common Core. We did not have a voice or a choice. This petition seeks to give our viewers, our voters in the state, a choice. We can continue with Common Core, taking Massachusetts, lowering and raising the upper states if that's what the state wants. That's not what I want. That's not what most of the people who have signed the petition want. But it still gives us a voice and a choice to make a decision that was made for us. It was taken out of our hands. And we have a lot of legislators on board with this. This is a bipartisan issue. The teachers overwhelmingly dislike Common Core. The students, I got the word in high school, the kids hate Common Core. I was told by a team of girls that got off the bus the other night, what do you think of Common Core? We hate it, is all I heard over and over from all these high school kids. So it's, we encourage you, look for us.
Bonnie, thank you so much for coming. Bonnie Johnson, again, Media Coordinator for End Common Core. And we in the Fitchburg Republican City Committee just love our activists. And the reason we love our activists is because we would not know about issues like Common Core unless we had volunteers like Bonnie who know about, are willing to spend their time learning about them and going out, talking about them and making a change. And thank you, Bonnie, so much. I have the Common Core little leaflet here in front of me just for your information. But as we leave you tonight, we want to thank you for watching Your Right to Know and sitting in with the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. Remember, your local city or town Republican Committee is your only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your liberty, your constitutional values, and your conservative rights. We encourage you to join us. Why? Because to us, GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity, and because we always stand for freedom. Thank you and good night.
We stand for freedom, so let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and